Hi, good afternoon to you all. Welcome back. We will proceed now this afternoon with two more panels for the Portugal Railway Summit. It will be followed by ecosystems with our moderator Francisco Cardoso de Reis, and then we'll go to technological challenge. I would like also to announce here our thank you very much for our gold sponsors that they are Thales, Competence Center Rail for Engineering of the University of Porto, Siemens, CP, Railways of Portugal, Metro do Porto, and Incomef. So I hope you enjoyed the afternoon. Just a final announcement that our platform where this event is going on has enlarged his capabilities and now he's allowed to receive more guests. So feel free to announce it. We are glad to have you here with us. And so now I pass the stage to Cardoso de Reis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, for giving me the floor. My first thanks is to the platform, to you, to the organization that gives us an excellent opportunity to discuss, to debate the relevant questions that we have inside our railway sector. And let me begin with some words of welcome. Good afternoon, dear all that are in this conference, and welcome to this discussion panel on rail ecosystems. My first words are addressed to all professionals in the national health systems who fight against this silent and visible enemy that has long plagued us. First words also for those who have to guarantee the daily functioning of our economy and cannot telework as we do. In particular, for the frontline railway workers who, with great courage, professionalism, and an immense sense of duty, contribute to the continuity of people and goods transportation and to keep our societies alive in Europe. First words as well to the entire railway community in recognition of the revealed capacity for reinvention and resilience, and for adapting to the new operational realities and the new risks that have arisen. In times of change and difficulties, the vision, ambition, and determination of leaders are fundamental, and today, more than in the recent past, this factor is crucial, as we depend on it to make the difference between passive continuity and disruptive creativity and innovation. The innovation that will allow the transformation of railways into the backbone of an integrated transport system, where each mode of transport contributes to the optimization of the global system performance in a sustainable manner, and that is the service of our communities. The European transport ecosystem has a decisive role in achieving the major objectives defined by the President of the Commission, in particular those associated with the Green Deal and the digital, and therefore the enormous relevance that this panel may have for the conclusions that may result from it and its contribution to the roadmap that we will have to follow and implement in the short and medium term. But because words and promises are not enough, we need firm and clear ecosystems commitment as objective, committed, and effective policies coming from the political decision makers, strictly aligned with the Green Deal and the digital strategy for the transport sector. Strong support to the new railway innovation partnership, Europe's Rail, reinforcing financial European Union contribution to develop new equipment, infrastructures, systems, and global management architecture focused on the operations efficiency and return for the society. Strong and representative sectors associations, coordinated and united in the interests of its members. Launch of large-scale multimodal transversal projects and initiatives with the financial resources necessary to respond to the new post-crisis environment. Dynamic suppliers capable of responding effectively to customers and willingness to establish virtuous partnerships. And last but not least, dynamic customers and users associations, pushing us to deliver better services. And the Portuguese ecosystem is keen to be involved, cooperate, and deliver products for railways, as we have the ambition, the determination, and the appropriate skills to do it. I conclude my introductory words by thanking the summit organization for inviting me to moderate this panel, and I cannot fail to highlight the privilege that has been granted to me for being able to frame the debate involving four personalities from the railway and transportation sector who will certainly talk about the future, collective willingness, and solutions. Despite being well known, let me briefly introduce our four speakers. First, Mrs. Elisabeth Werner is an Austrian national and holds an economics degree from the University of Vienna and an MA in European Affairs. Mrs. Werner is now, after a long work inside the community, Mrs. Werner is Director for Land Transport in DG Mobility and Transport, dealing with rail, road, and road safety legislation. After Mr. Alberto Mazzola, an old friend, which now is the Executive Director of CER, and all the railway community is looking to him, waiting for the good things he's going to deliver for all the community. He has a long career in transportation in the Ferrovie dello Stato Italiane. He's an engineer on nuclear. We don't want a bomb. Okay, and he's also awarded with the title of let me say in Italian, Cavaliere della Repubblica Italiana, given by the President Sergio Mattarella. After also a friend, Mr. Carlo Borghini, which has been appointed Executive Director of Shift to Rail 1 some years ago in 2016, and he with his energy, has brought a lot to the sector in terms of innovation and the capabilities to do different things. So he's a really important job for the future to manage the shift to rail 2, the new Europe's rail. Last but not least, Monsieur Philippe Citroën. He is the General Director of UNIFE, the well-known association of the suppliers, big suppliers, small suppliers, and medium suppliers. All of them are inside UNIFE, and has a really important role to contribute to by the supplier side to the future of railways. So let's begin, and I'll give the floor to Mrs. Elisabeth Werner to begin his speech and communication and the important things she is going to give us.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you also for the introduction. Railways is indeed a very tightly knit ecosystem, so I find myself in the panel with well-known colleagues and people I work with closely. But you will have heard that we as European Union are trying to dedicate 2021 to be a European year of railways. What we want to do is highlight the crucial role that rail plays in our society, the role it plays as being a sustainable, innovative, safe transport mode with a strong European dimension, connecting people and businesses across the EU. We want to put this in the spotlight, and this is why I'm very grateful for Portugal, the presidency, but also you from the industry and from this conference to give us the opportunity to reach out beyond our usual interlocutors and talking to your audience in the Portugal railway ecosystem. Our goal in this year is twofold. And we want to promote rail with the numerous benefits it has, of course, to an audience that sometimes we don't reach, to attract new customers to railways. But we also want to discuss, of course, quite openly the challenges that the rail society still must overcome to realize its full potential, because we're convinced that there is untapped potential in railways, and we would like to see the market share grow. We would like to see more passengers and more customers using railways for it to become more attractive. And so basically I see two ecosystems. First of all, the ecosystem railways, where our European ambition is to really go beyond national systems and come to a true European rail ecosystem. And we recently had a very crucial date. End of October 2020 was the day when the technical pillar of the European fourth railway package fully entered into force. And it's an important day because it means that we now have a set of European rules and procedures with a significantly strengthened power for the European Railway Agency as well. And that means, in practical terms, that manufacturers, but also rail undertakings, can now make a single application for authorization to go everywhere in the EU. And that brings us much closer to having trains that can technically at least run more or less anywhere in the EU. That's why we are also monitoring very closely the correct transposition of this at the national level to make sure manufacturers, railway undertakings, but also infrastructure managers who are all potentially interested in these rules will be able to get the full benefits very quickly. And I have to say, unfortunately, member states still need to do a bit of homework here, but nevertheless, we already see a practical impact because the Railway Agency in December already had authorized 14,000 vehicles for going to the European network. They issued 20 single safety certificates and over 15 ERTMS trackside approvals. So clearly there is an appetite from this ecosystem to go European. And we now want to follow suit, very carefully also working with national authorities to ensure that there are no more obstacles for rail crossing the borders and really working on a European dimension. But the second ecosystem in which rail is evolving, and I think this is at least as important, is of course the wider transport ecosystem, because railways by their nature are not isolated. You will never be able to do a door-to-door service. And this is why, from our point of view, it's extremely important to collaborate with the other modes to make sure maritime and ports as the clients for freight, but also cities are well linked. And of course, road transport is well connected. Increasingly also alternative or new active modes of transport, whereby you could at the station as a passenger switch over to, say, a bicycle or an electric scooter perhaps to go wherever you want to go. And in that context, I want to underline in particular that as a Commission, we have proposed in December our European Smart and Sustainable Mobility Strategy, because for transport sector in the EU, by far the most serious challenge is, of course, to significantly reduce the emissions and become more sustainable. We look at this as our contribution from transport side to the European Green Deal, but also reducing the emissions is the license for the transport sector to grow. And that's why we have particularly high hopes for railway in there. And we see digitalization as a tool, as a means to achieve this. For us, it's important also that this transformation that is to happen in railways clearly makes sure that mobility remains available and affordable. So we want to in particular look at regions, connectivity questions, accessibility questions, questions related to jobs, questions related to price and costs. In that strategy, we set out a number of flagships, 10 big flagships overall. And there's quite a number of these flagships that are highly relevant for railways and that we hope to shine a light on, as well as part of our discussions, events, workshops, conferences that we want to organize as part of the European Year of Rail. We want to make sure we can, with that Year of Rail, but also beyond, contribute to achieve by 2030 100 climate neutral cities, a scheduled collective transport service under 500 kilometers that can be carbon neutral. And I think there is a particular challenge for railways, really to ensure that it is an alternative to private cars, but also to short-haul flights. We want to double the high-speed rail connections and make sure there is a European network emerging that links major cities and capitals across the continent along our trans-European transport networks. We also want to make sure that rail freight traffic increases by 50% by 2030 and doubles by 2050, which is not a small order because of already existing capacity constraints on the track. Then we want to really be sure for this to happen, that there is also a good overall framework ensuring prices, taxation, etc., work well for this to develop, so that our most sustainable transport modes, rail and waterborne, can compete on an equal footing. Where they are attractive, they shouldn't have any cost disadvantages. For this to happen, also certainly question of digitalization, questions of traffic management, getting rid of paper for all kinds of products, and for the passenger, ensuring that we have integrated multimodal electronic ticketing. So we have a lot of things to discuss, and we really hope that with the energy and the enthusiasm in that European Year of Rail, we can put a number of things on the good track, because 2030 might seem a long time or far away, but for railways, the decisions for investments, you will be taking them today if you want to achieve these goals by 2030. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Back to you. I look forward to our discussion.
Cardoso dos Reis, the floor is yours to introduce our next guest. I'm already sharing the screen.
Sorry,
for the presentation.
I mute myself and I forgot that. So thank you, Elizabeth, for your presentation. And for sure, 2030 is just tomorrow. So we have to work a lot. Let me emphasize two things that you talked about. Is the existence of a rail ecosystem and the transport ecosystem. And I think that we cannot be so good as we must if we don't work together. So I prefer to talk about transport ecosystem. And it's an integrated approach to do transportation. And I think we must change the silos approach to a matrix approach to optimize what we do for society. And also, we cannot work with this ecosystem on transport without forgetting cities. The urban approach, the organization of cities, and the demographic the approach also, and something that we in the railway sector we consider really important, which is a common level playing field, to have a fair competition and a fair cooperation among all the modes. So now I give the floor to Alberto, just for him to present the new things he has to give to us. Please, Alberto.
Thank you, Francisco, also for your kind words in the beginning of this session. We know each other for a long time. Francisco is an important actor in Portugal, I would say also in Europe, and also in the worldwide scene of railways in the world. So we've been together for several years, and I can witness this. So thank you also to Paulo Duarte for the invitation, and let me say also to CP, the member Portuguese Railways, which are part of CER together with the many other members. I will go to the next slide. If we can move to the next slide, there is the slide where we okay, thank you very much. This is the association CR membership, Community of European Railways. I've been appointed from the 1st of January of this year as executive director, and representing all these associations. That is 71% of the European rail network, 76% of the rail freight traffic, and 92% of the passengers operation in Europe. You find here all the companies that are members of the association, practically speaking, all the European companies, all the European countries that have railways, plus also several accession countries, or countries that have a strong relation with the European Union, EFTA countries like Switzerland and Norway, or countries that are in the discussion to enter in the European Union. I will go to the next one. The next slide is about rail. This is something that we would like. We had a brief discussion also with some members of Parliament last week, where what we say with this new Green Deal policy that the European Union, the Commission has launched in the last 2 years, and where transport is the only sector where emissions has been growing in the last 20, 30 years, I think it's good to know that rail, let me say, is a ready-made solution for decarbonizing transport. What does it mean? We don't need to invent something. Railways are there. We need to promote railways, and we need to promote railways to decarbonize. You have the figure here in these slides. The comparison between passenger, road, and air, I would say, are striking, but the same is true also for freight compared to inland waterways and road transport. So this is what we are saying. We consume about 2% of the total energy in transport, but we carry 18% of the freight, 8% of passenger. And let me say why we are saying we are ready-made solution. Just promoting railways, we are promoting good results for the environment. So if railways are able to increase their market share without changing mobility, we certainly will be profitable for the environment, for our future. I will go to the next one. Unfortunately, also railways are suffering from the COVID crisis. Last year has been a very difficult year for all the transport sector, for public transport. We just published last week a CR, the figures concerning also European railways. In terms of commercial passenger services, commercial, I'm saying, not public service obligation, railways has lost about a bit more than 24 billion euros, 25 billion euros in turnover in 2020. This is equivalent about 42% of the turnover compared to 2019. And this is true also in this first month of the year, where I would say limitation in traffic, limitation to movement, the situation of the pandemic are still impacting quite heavily on the results of railways. Freight was not so bad, but also lost in terms of turnover about 12% of their turnover, 1.9 billion euros, and freight was coming from a difficult situation. Why am I saying this? Because we had also a discussion with Elizabeth Werner yesterday on this subject, and we are discussing also with the other DG inside the European Commission. You have seen in last year more or less a support of 32 billion euros given to state aid to aviation, and you have seen about 7 billion euros of aid given to railways, essentially aid in Germany, in the Netherlands, and in Austria. We are pleading also for the European Commission to have a revision of the state aid, temporary framework for COVID state aid, in order also to cover some possibility for railways, commercial railways, to be supported. It should not be a surprise, Eurostar is almost bankrupt, but you might have also some other private companies and also public companies suffering for this year. So why am I starting with this? I think it's good we look for the future, but I think we need to care for the present, If we lose railways these years, I think it will be difficult to build them in the next years. Let me go to the next one. I will go then to the more positive part. So it is our future. We very much appreciated the EU smart and sustainable mobility strategy that the Commission has recently adopted at the end of the last year. And let us say the ambitions that have been presented by Elizabeth before, so doubling the high-speed rail by 2030 and tripling by 2050, if we made a calculation, this means a compound annual growth of 7% per year, every year. This means that we are in a Chinese progression when China was growing every year before COVID. So this will require a lot of efforts, and in particularly a lot of investments, because some of the network, part of the network is already saturated, 2-3% of the network is today saturated in Europe, and we will need to invest more in infrastructure in order to be able to carry this traffic. So it's not the same situation in every country, but I think it is important, and I will come back later on, but I can anticipate. One of the priorities that I received from the CEOs of the European railways, starting my mandate, is to push to have a high-speed infrastructure connecting all the European capitals and the major cities in Europe. And I think this fits well with this objective. So if we have the infrastructure, we will see the development of this traffic, and we will see modal shift from aviation to railways, where Barcelona, Madrid, Milan, Rome, Lyon, Paris, Munich, Berlin, in all where this investment has been taking place, we have seen a huge move of traffic from road and from air to railways. The second objective is a 50% increase of rail freight by 2030 and doubling by 2050 is also important. It's a 4% growth every year. So it's not anything, it requires also certain effort and capacity to increase our activity. I think freight can also benefit from the investment that we make on high-speed infrastructure, because the rest of the capacity will be freed in order to be used by the freight operators. Of course, the capacity is not enough. What we are pleading also here to increase digitalization. We have a long discussion on digital automatic coupling. I think Francisco is a witness on this. All the rest of the world, so Russia, China, US, everywhere, wagons are automatic coupled. In Europe is the only area of the world where we still need manpower to couple wagons among them. We would like to go a step further, not just automatic coupling, but also have digital connection. This is an important project that I think Carlo Borghini, maybe we can refer afterwards, because we are counting a lot on Shift to Rail 2, how to achieve these things. And then the multimodal smart core network by 2030, completing what we are doing in Europe on the core network, and completing the comprehensive 10T by 2050. This is fully shared for us. I think it is important that the ongoing projects are completed. We have many projects around Europe, connection between Spain and France, Italy and France, Denmark and Germany. I can quote many of these projects, and I think when they will be completed, I think the skyline will be different for railways. So it is important that we keep this activity and we keep continuing investing and completing what we started. Of course, we need to think also what we can add to this. I will go to the next one. The next slide is, so the priorities was referring that I received starting my mandate. I already started with the first one about getting, which is the recovery from the COVID situation. And in doing this recovery, we are looking very much to the investment. Next Generation EU is something that is the most important investment program that Europe has ever had. I think railways need to be part of it. And it is important that each country, as I understood Portugal, when I discussed with the Portuguese Minister of Transport, put the right attention to this plan and insert railways inside them. I've seen in some letter that the Commission sent to member states that this should be a priority. I think it should be in each country, because they will never have another opportunity like this one in the future. So we are pleading also for more attention to freight transport, passenger and infrastructure management. And as I was saying before, the long distance is certainly for freight the area where we can, I would say, profit more, and where we can, I would say, get the right position. It is feasible. We have 18% of market share. In other areas of the world, the market share of freight, rail freight, is 42%. So we are not talking about dreaming, but something that is already made possible in other parts of the world. Of course, with a different infrastructure, probably less mixed traffic, but it's something that can be achieved. For instance, let me launch one idea that I was discussing a time ago. We should not have in the core network any core port which is not connected to railways. It should be a shame that we have ports that are connected only to road, and then we push for the Green Deal. So we need also in the revision of the 10T that is coming in the future that we are sure that major airport is connected to the high-speed network, high-speed rail, major port should be connected to railways. It's something that we should care, we should look about it. I will go to the next. So here we have three different, the first one I would say is still related to the infrastructure, and it's essentially when we talk about cross-border to complete what we started, this is what I referred. We are also looking at enhancing the funding of infrastructure and looking beyond the 10T and the Connecting Europe facility. Connecting Europe facility in Europe has 13 billion euros. Is a catalyzer for national investment, so very important. Cohesion funding has 70 billion euros for transport, and recovery and resilience facility even more. So all these tools should come together to support it. And we started to look also what is going on outside Europe, and for instance, the recent comprehensive agreement on investment between Europe and China. This investment will apply also to railways when it comes into force. This means that Chinese can invest in European railways at the same conditions, most likely, that European railways can invest in China. It's something that we need to watch and how to see to develop. I think Europe needs investment, but of course we need also certain sort of reciprocity, how we are moving in this world. To this priority that I received from my management committee, I added three on my side to my team. The first one is the RTMS. I think we have been working more than 20 years on the RTMS, and we got 10% of the network. We need to find with these new means, financing means that we have, to be able to accelerate the deployment, because any digital activity will be based on it. Without an RTMS, it's very difficult to get automatic train operation, is very difficult that digital automatic coupling. The second one is a shift to rail 2, to find our place here in the innovation, in particular when we are referring to the new digital innovation, so digital automatic coupling RTMS and mobility as a service, and also to make a success of the European Year of Rail. This is a unique opportunity. We are investing a lot, and we are covering many aspects, from the investment to the social dialogue, relation with the trade unions, opening discussion with the passengers and enterprises. And let me say, we have been very happy to start this with European Railway Award, where in this occasion we gave an award, a recognition to the President of the European Parliament, to a civil society initiative for free interrail, to Ealing, an hydrogen train. And also, let me say, it has been closed by the Minister Nuno dos Santos, the Portuguese minister, that when we met, pushed us to do as much as possible in these 6 months. This is what we will try to do, and I think we will see again in Lisbon in these 6 months with other initiatives. Thank you, Francisco, and I try to present what we are watching the next 2 years from our side.
Thank you very much, Alberto. Let me highlight 4 things that is the result of your speech. The effective sector involvement to solve the bottlenecks and increase activity and efficiency of the sector. Priority for railways, we need it. Another important conclusion is the financial programs or baskets available to finance the needs. We have to change not only infra, but also the activity, all the activity. And for sure, we need strong strategic leadership. So let's go to the next speaker, which is our colleague Carlo Borghini, which the executive director of a very, very, very important program that we need to be involved and to support. Please, Carlo, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Francisco, for your introduction. And it's always really an honor to be here, part of this event, part of the presidency of the Council of the European Union carried by Portugal. And this Railway Summit, as also thank you to the platform for having organized such an event. I would like to carry you from where we are today in the Shift to Rail program, the sector program dedicated to rail, and shift you to Europe's rail, and using also a bit our name and our logo really to make a shift to where we would like to go in our direction. And clearly many things changed since when Shift to Rail started in 2016, in the last past 5 years, and how also we have evolved in the thinking in rail. I think you remember, and everyone has present this slide and the focus at the starting point in Shift to Rail: capacity increase, life cycle cost reduction, increased punctuality or reliability. But more and more during the year, the focus on a contribution to the reducing the gas emission and energy efficiency became a part of the core activity of the joint undertaking. And many ask why rail has to focus on emission reduction, but as such, rail maybe has not so much to do because largely is already electrified. We have also already started working on hydrogen trains. We are also looking at batteries as a solution, but it can be a major game changer in the contribution to the sustainable and smart mobility strategy of the European Commission that Elizabeth has introduced. And this is our role. We can really shift the way we are becoming mobile and we are transporting cargoes. Finally, our key achievement has been already mentioned, to ensure a single European railway area, to be sure that a train can travel everywhere in Europe, or you can take train and operate your train any part of Europe, and not only. Where we started from? Well, I believe everyone knows about the innovation program of Shift to Rail. At the center, we have the brain of the system, the traffic management, but we are also looking at how the vehicle interact with the traffic management, both for passenger and for rail freight. And we are looking at how the interaction of the passenger. But all these type of initiatives that we have experienced in the past year that have been starting to deliver the results, and unfortunately we were not able to present them in the InnoTrans 2020 due to the pandemic situation. And we hope to present them in the next InnoTrans in 2022, but also during the different events that will take place in the European Year of Rail. Such type of results and technology are coming from a bottom-up approach, indicating the different pieces of technological solution that we need to bring to the market to accelerate the transformation of the rail system. But it's not sufficient to achieve such results. we need to go a step forward. And this is really why we are focusing now on the Europe's rail system. You have already seen our catalog of solutions, in which we have packaged the technology solution coming from Shift to Rail in concrete capabilities that will be industrialized in the year to come. Not only, but also we are working with the Commission and European Agency for Rail to ensure that such a solution enter to become part of the TSI. In order to be sure that we accelerate the change that is coming. I'm talking about ATO, I'm talking about the telecommunication work we are doing together also with UIC. I'm talking about positioning with satellite and not only, and moving block and so on and so on. But also, as Alberto mentioned before, the European digital automatic coupler, in order to bring the European rail sector from the current situation to a situation in which we have coupling and decoupling automatically performed, but also providing energy and digital information to the rail system. This will create a major opportunity for the rail sector. It's not only changing a piece of technology, it's rethinking the way we are operating the rail freight. And I will show some picture about what does it mean concretely, this type of work that every day our people are doing. But you can find also many other solutions, for example, in terms of ticketing via the interoperability framework. And we have also many Portuguese companies that are currently involved in the Shift to Rail program, both in all the activity, from the infrastructure side, passenger side, rail freight, traffic management, and also the ticketing aspects. But what happened during the past year, as I think everyone knows, the European Green Deal has been introduced by Commission President von der Leyen, but also the focus on a new industrial strategy, a digital agenda, the Europe in the world, meaning that we have identified much more ambitious policy priority that we have tried to embrace in the years to come, although with a quite rigid research innovation program, because we focus on research innovation. And now the sustainable and smart mobility strategy that Elizabeth introduced before will be really the paramount driver of the future work that we'll be doing in Europe's rail, because we believe that rail research and innovation can be really one of the key elements contributing to achieving the ambitious targets attributed to rail in the sustainable and smart mobility strategy. And how we believe that this concretely can happen is to really integrate the European transport network via a European layer for traffic management, not only dedicated national level, but integrated the full European spectrum, because it's the only way to maximize the performance of the network that is already under pressure, especially when you have combined traffic, is to bring data together and communicate data together. Clear delivery multimodality, because what does it mean concretely? It means that rail cannot only define its own goal, it has to define its own goals in order to deliver services to its clients that are passenger and cargo services. And finally, we have a strong European industry, and this industry is subject to tough competition. We need to avoid that we enter in the valley of death of the innovation that we are delivering together. So these three key objectives, but concretely, what does it mean? I think everyone has seen this type of image, and everyone was shocked by having this image. And why I'm using it is only to make a reference what does concretely means. When a cargo ship, one of the largest cargo ships arriving in the port of Rotterdam, can carry 23,000 20-foot equivalent containers, and 50% is going on barges, 45%, 10% maximum on train, 45% goes on a road. This means 12,000 trucks. If I talk like this, nobody understands it. When you see the picture, you understand what does it mean. And I think this is the concrete aspect. We need to find the way to create sustainability, connecting and creating new logistic value chain into which rail has a role to play. But we need to transform to do this. And as Alberto said about the digital automatic coupler, not only the brake test, Up to now, we have people that are checking all the trains with their feet to check it. This is not anymore sustainable in the future society. We put our people at risk. You can imagine what can happen in this situation. You can have other trains and so on and so on and so on. And the time dedicated to this, and maybe also a different cross-border. So this is where we need to work. We need to create and put down all the barriers that would allow to transform the rail system. And for this reason, the Commission will be most probably proposing in the next days the setting up of the Europe Rail JU, the new partnership. And you can see there is this blue pillar. This blue pillar will be fundamentally the research and innovation activity that we need to do. And what type of research and innovation activity? We need to eliminate the barrier to interoperability, provide solutions for integration, covering traffic management, vehicle infrastructure, and services. But it's not sufficient because we'll have only a technologically driven program. We need to ensure that this program is driven by a system approach. And in order to ensure this means that we need to bring the sector together beyond the membership to ensure we define together, and clearly Alberto is here with us, but we have Philippe Citroën, the industry is there. We need to involve the infrastructure manager and also the relation with the urban mobility. Operational concept of operation that will be well going beyond the technology, the functional system architecture, the type of services that we need to provide to our clients, and ensure that there is a full connection between what is the vision that we want to bring forward in order to achieve the transformation and the technology and the operational solution that we need to bring this together. And the other key components is the interface with the European Agency for Railway as system authority, but also with the standardization body in order to accelerate the market uptake. We should be able to bring solutions packaged in a manner that they go through the process of authorization in order to maximize the performance of the system, reducing the time to market. Because I think this is the way we can provide services to people. And at the center of this process of digital transformation and deployment of technology at speed, we need to invest in the people of the railway people today, or the staff of the railway, put humans at the center of this digital transformation. I think without this, this will not happen. And I think it's our responsibility to ensure as a sector that we take on board the challenge provided by the mobility strategy and we deliver at the expectations. Clearly, in order to do this, we need to be a trusted organization and we need to work together as a sector. So we have here a series of possible topics that will be part of the future Europe's rail system. Still are topics because the process of setting up is only starting now, or will be starting now. And fundamentally, this transformation of the rail sector will have to look from the rail perspective, how we can match the expectation of the logistic value chain, how we can match the expectation of the multimodal transport for passenger and provide the delivery, the necessary services. Concretely, there will be clearly compromise on the funding, compromise on the objective, on the strategy of the company. But at the end, this should be driven as an answer to passenger and cargo needs and driven by the union policies. And I go back to the first slide because we are back here. We now have a commitment, and the commitment is that by 2030, we need to have a European rail traffic management in place in a context of a single European railway area. This is our commitment. And I think if we are working together, as also the words say, creating the correct ecosystem around the partnership, involving all the actors. And this, I think, is one of the reasons why the Commission proposed the approach via open calls, in order to embrace the participation. Why the Commission has pushed the logic of the system pillar is because it's allowing to bring on board the different actors from all the different parts of Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carlo, for your excellent presentation. Let me highlight some of the message items we can conclude. So you have a very clear commitment that we must deliver and work for it. That has more ambition, that wants to promote integration, to have an European approach to transportation. something that it is new. If you analyze Shift to Rail 1, it's the inclusion of urban mobility, which is a very important decision to promote integration for mass transit transportation, namely. And last but not least, something you said that is really important for us at the railway sector is to put people at the center of the digital transformation. Without people, we cannot change. So people is needed. And thank you for this approach coming from Shift to Rail. So let's go to the other speaker, which is our colleague Philippe Citroën from UNIFE. Please, Philippe, you take the floor.
Thank you, Francisco, and thank you, Paulo Duarte, for inviting me. It's a big honor to be here in this important meeting organized by the Portugal Railway Cluster. And I would like to say it's also an honor to be there because the Portuguese presidency just started. We had the pleasure to listen a few days ago during the Railway Award ceremony. We listened to the speech made by the Transport Minister of Portugal, and we were very happy to see that a lot of investments are going to be planned here in Portugal. And as it has been said, as the member states have now to present to the Commission the recovery plan, it's absolutely essential to have a lot of rail projects in this recovery plan. This is a huge opportunity to have a quick financing. I will come back on this before 2026. If we go to the first slide, I would like to go very quickly to the first slide here. In fact, the title of this debate was about rail industrial ecosystem, so I will try to focus on this. A lot of things have been said by our colleagues, so maybe there will be a few remarks which are not completely linked to what we usually say during our meetings. But if we go quickly for the next slide and say, just to make a short presentation, but I think it's not necessary to present UNIFE. We have 100 companies in our association, and we are an association of train builder, rail equipment suppliers working on rolling stock, infrastructure, telecommunication, and signaling subsystem. And we have a 84% market share in Europe, and we supply almost 50% of the worldwide rail production. If we go to the next slide, then we see the list of the members. Unfortunately, you will see a lot of companies who are working in Portugal, but we've been always quite active trying to bring some Portuguese companies on board. So it's welcome to them, and they will know that if they come with us and work with us, it will be very interesting, not only for the projects in Portugal, but in other parts of the world. And we have also close relations with the associate members. So if we go to the next slide, we see that we are in strategic industry for the European economy. We have more or less 400,000 people working all over Europe in our sector. We have to be innovative. It has been said very clearly by Carlo, and we have to continue to be a world leader and exporter. Now, if we go to the ecosystem, which is what was the title of the session, in fact, you have to know that the Commissioner Breton, who is in charge of the industry, has launched in 2022 what he called the industrial ecosystem, and that is certainly very interesting for the platform, the Portuguese platform, where they say that we have to build the industrial ecosystem which bring together crucial players, academic and research institutes, suppliers, and SMEs and larger companies. And we understood that in 2021, there will be proposal from the Commission if we go to the other side, and we have to see how we can work in those industrial ecosystems. You will see that it's quite challenging because Thierry Breton, or let's say the Commission, has created those industrial ecosystem. You have 14 ecosystems, and there's one ecosystem which is about mobility, transport, and automotive, where we are with the maritime sector and with the automotive sector. So it will be interesting to see how we can work together on some specific topics, but it will be also interesting to see what will be the proposals made by the Commission in order to be sure that in a system we are not working, of course, the operators, the infrastructure manager and the rail suppliers are working together, but we need to bring the other players on board. And it is maybe one of the big success of Shift to Rail 1, because it's in a way the first time that all those rail stakeholders have been able to put at the same table by Carlo, and it had shown that the exchange of information, of work, of project has been absolutely essential, and I think it was very important to see that, and that is certainly a message for the Portuguese clusters. It's important to know that the SMEs have been very active in this kind of joint undertaking. Now, if we go to the next slide, what we can see is that we are entering into very challenging times for the rail industry ecosystem, and Alberto has made a presentation on the issues concerning the rail undertakings and the losses made by this sector, and he has mentioned some specific points. But so it's absolutely essential to put pressure on the member states to be sure that they will find solutions. Like, for example, our colleagues in the US have been able to get a lot of money for the transit agencies to see how we can cover those losses. But we have also to be aware that we are facing a tough competition, not only from the other sectors, but if you go to the next slide, from mainly China, because China have launched a big campaign to make business all over the world, and we see that they are getting closer to Europe. And if I go back to the slide presented by sorry, but we keep this slide. But if you go back to the slide presented by Alberto a few minutes ago, where he says that he wants to have investment coming from China and Russia, I would say that before doing that, we have to go on a level playing field, because you know that we used to have an accessibility into the Chinese market, which was 6 years ago close to 62 or 63%. And now in 5 or 6 years, the accessibility for EU rail supply companies is close to 17%. So you see that it's getting more and more complicated for us to work in China. So there is an issue. I know that the Commission has been working on this, and there was some declaration, but we really need to work on this level playing field with the Chinese before we open the market. And I was very happy to see that, for example, in Romania, they took a decision by saying that Chinese companies will not be able to bid in Romania, because there are no agreements for Romanian companies, and they cannot bid in China for the time being. So that's also the kind of thing which are important for us. If we go to the next slide, we have to see, if we summarize quickly the industrial policy, on our side, we need to, of course, if we want to keep our leadership, we need to work on research and innovation, and it has been presented by Carlo, and we're very hopeful that we have a very important Europe Rail project in the next 7 years. We have to think about the skills and training, and that is certainly very important in Portugal, because you have well-known universities who are working on those topics. You have the Industry 4.0 on digitization. And then after that, we need to be sure that we will improve the EU and international business environment by having a EU single market for rail product. The best value for money in public procurement, I'll come back quickly on this, and what I call the level playing field. And we need also, of course, to be sure that there will be public grants for rail projects, and that there will be a big mobilization from development banks and private investment. And we know that the EIB, for example, will become the green bank in the future. In the next slide, I go very quickly, because usually for each presidency, and that's the document that we had sent to the EU presidency, where more or less we present all the asks on the most important political fights, but I will not say much more than this. And then before I finish, I would like to say that, of course, us in the next slide, we'll see that the most important thing is what is going to happen on Europe Rail, on ship to rail, and we see what are the impacts that we expect, the necessity to increase flexibility, attractiveness, rail market share, and competitiveness of the EU rail supply industry. There is the importance of the life cycle cost saving. We have to, of course, to be at the heart of the reduction of emissions. It has been, hydrogen has been mentioned, battery has been mentioned by Carlo. We have to work on reduction of noise and go on the direction of zero energy waste. And it has always been said, but we didn't go into details. We have to support interoperability within the SERA with, of course, the deployment of ERTMS, which has also been mentioned by Alberto. Now on skills, and next slide on skills and training. The Commission has launched with us the blueprint, and that might be interesting for also for Portuguese stakeholders to participate in all the meetings which would be organized. As you see, they have we have 32 European partners from academia, railway operating committee, and rail supply industry. So we'll be open to invite Portuguese stakeholders and universities who are interested to get information on this skill program. And then the last thing that I would like to say in the two slides, one is about best value for money and public procurement. We've been able with CR and IM to work on what we call the most economically advantageous tender. This is absolutely essential to adopt an approach not only based on the price, but on the best price quality ratio over the lifetime of the product and services. And there's also the possibility when there is a tender and then the company who is going to win the tender is a state-owned enterprise coming from one country, you have the possibility to use some articles of the public procurement directive and to reject bids if more than 50% of the value is added outside of the EU. Now, on the last slide, I would like just to say very quickly that we were very happy to see that there were strong messages in the EU Sustainable and Smart Mobility Strategy, targets which are extremely, let's say, important, like doubling the freight traffic by 2015 and tripling the high-speed traffic. Of course, this is extremely challenging, but we will have to work together with the sector and to put the pressure on the member states and on the Commission to be sure that those challenges will be achieved in the future. And then the last thing is about the last slide is, of course, about the importance of the public investment. I think everything has already been mentioned on the fact that we need to be sure that CEF, the structural funds are also extremely important. It's been mentioned. We don't forget that the Commissioner for the cohesion policy is coming from Portugal, and I hope that he will be extremely supportive. And of course, what is absolutely essential are the national recovery plan. This is absolutely huge opportunity, the big opportunity for the member states to put rail in those recovery plans. And, you know, this is important to be sure that we will get massive investment towards rail, which will contribute to the EU's effort to achieve climate neutrality. So thank you again for having invited me, and we remain, of course, at the disposal of the Portuguese presidency, but also of the cluster to work with them in the next future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Philippe. Some conclusions, quick conclusions. I must highlight your commitment to cooperate with all the stakeholders, which is something important, to have the partnership of suppliers to deliver the right products. Your ambition to have a good result and overcome the tough competition, you must respond, coming from everywhere. And to continue the European industrial leadership, which is really important. And also, I must highlight your approach also to the skills for the guys that must enter to our sector and its training. So we finished the presentations, Paul. So we must go to
now we have an open table.
Yep.
With these honored guests, we have an open table, a discussion open table.
Do you have
round table, let's say so.
coming from the assistants? No.
As far as I'm collecting them, I will pass it to you.
So I will begin with Elizabeth, and I will ask you, what are DG Move's medium-term policies to promote railways and green transportation systems? The effective policies we can expect coming from our European decision makers?
Thank you for this question. And thank you for the good presentations previously. I really think we have the common objectives, and the question is not do we agree or not exactly on the percentage on what we want to achieve with rail freight, what we want to achieve with passenger connections, international high performance, high speed passenger connections. The question is, how will we do this? And clearly, we are also quite worried about the COVID impact on the rail sector, in particular on smaller companies, on newcomer companies operating in a commercial context. And I guess also it's a fact that state budgets will, after now expanding, will perhaps later on tighten, and there will be an impact on the investment. This is why I totally agree that we must make the best use possible on this very large 750 billion recovery fund, Next Generation EU, which is both grants and loan, to invest now in railways, because investing in railways is investing in sustainable and digital future and fits exactly this twin transformation that we want to achieve in Europe. So first of all, really front load projects, in particular focus on mature projects that at the national level were already in the pipeline, and you can now hope to do them just a little bit faster so that by 2030 we already see the results. I also want to say that for us, broadly speaking, at the EU level, the legislative framework is in place. So there won't be a fifth railway package. We have an open market for freight. We have an open market for passengers. It's about how we implement it so that we actually get the benefits from it. So we need to end long transition period. We need to end national exceptions. We need to come to this single European system so that industry can produce large numbers that also brings the costs down, and modernize rolling stock, modernize equipment. The third big thing here is digitalization. In that area, I think we have a huge opportunity to use this data in a smart way to come to more capacity, and that's of course, but not only ERTMS, and a smart way of integrating the railways with other transport modes. Again, the estimated time of arrival, the ticketing questions. All of this will allow us to get so much more out of the existing infrastructure and of the existing railways rolling stock. I completely, totally agree with Alberto. If we want to see practically on the ground for our business, for our passengers, a difference by 2027, it has to be digital, because we know it takes a long time to start building a new track. So we need to make this data, this digitalization, so we reduce the downtimes because of work. So we reduce the downtime that is required for maintenance, so that we lose all the unnecessary inefficiencies and get the most out of these assets that we already own. So what will the Commission propose? Very clearly and very soon, I think a matter of day now, the renewal of the joint undertaking, We will then work on the Trans-European Transport Networks, the TEN-T. That's essential because we want to align this map that was shown in Alberto's presentation with the rail freight corridors geographically, but this will unlock investments in terminals, hubs, and stations where the different transport modes come across. You use the word matrix. I like that matrix approach very much. We then need to work on a better capacity management, especially for the international trains, where today at borders, they still have to stop and wait and have to redo technical checks. You know, when a truck can just drive over the border and the train has to stop for several hours, that is something that makes train traffic less attractive. And that's why we have to eliminate this. So this is the other thing we will work on, the international capacity management. Last but not least, I already mentioned the ticketing, because we think that that's also what makes journeys intermodal and multimodal for passengers. And it's a big hurdle that when I want to take a train today from Brussels to Lisbon, it's not obvious to find a single place where I could book this journey. I have to know what exists, and then I have to go and pick in different platforms and with different railway operators and myself combine my journey. Then I have a ticket. Then I have a seat, but if something goes wrong, I'm in big trouble, because then I have to start all over again. So again, here, just to make it so a little bit easier for people to leave their cars behind and to choose rail, because that's the better solution for the society and for the planet.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for your clear answer. And now I will ask Alberto. What aspects will you highlight about the role and response to the pandemic crisis coming from the rail operating community? Because it has been a really efficient and resilient response.
Yes, thank you, Francisco. Let me say that railways continue to operate in all countries, even with the pandemic from the beginning. And I remember both of us were involved also in some activities worldwide, how to get experiences from the rest of the world. For instance, we started already end of February, beginning of March, to learn from the Chinese what they did. And then also to apply this to the European railways and spreading the knowledge about railways, how we should deal with the pandemic and continue to do our traffic. So I would say in all countries, railways continue to operate. And in the first months, also in difficult conditions, also taking over some role in the healthcare. You've seen in Spain, you've seen in France, you've seen in other countries where also trains will be used also to move sick people from, I would say, very intensive regions where the pandemic was very strong. But so continue to operate on passenger, providing providing services. We had to be reduced in some countries for long distance. I think freight has been impressive. So we lost 12% of the turnover, it's true. But during that month, and I was in continuous contact with Elizabeth on that moment, we were watching how transit the borders and the problems that we had and the problems we had in road. So railways have been, I would say, the simplest way how to move freight from one country to another. And I would say this should stay as a lesson, because without our contribution, I think this situation would have been more difficult. Transporting food, transporting health materials, transporting what is needed in the normal life. So I think railways have been on this contributed a lot of the first months of the pandemic in Europe, how to, I would say, allows people to live normally. Because the supermarkets where, I would say, we were able to find food in the supermarket is because somebody was transporting them. Of course, also road did its role, but I would say less than railways, if I may say. In that occasion, railways have been much more resilient and performant. So we gave our contribution. We are still giving our contribution today, but as I said, I think we need also to start reflecting about supporting railways. Around the table here we have, I would say, Portugal. I think Portugal supported TAP. We have Philippe Citroën from France. France supported Air France. We are from Italy. Alitalia got support from the Italian state. Lufthansa is operating in Austria, and they got support also in. I think we need to think also about railways here, because, and this is my slight difference compared to what Elizabeth said. Small companies in railways, yes, is important, but also large companies are suffering. And when I was referring to these air carriers, I'm not referring to the small ones. I'm referring to the biggest air carriers that we have in Europe. And I think we need also some kind of support here, in our case, to pass this moment. Because the Green Deal is important, but it must be based on railways that will be able to survive in the best way this difficult situation. Of course, we make our contribution, improving efficiency, doing other things, but we should not forget it. Let me say in this moment that we are also there, and we need also some support. We provide our role, but I will stop here, Francisco. I know from your visage also that you share these points, and I'm happy about this, but I will see all the panel are sharing on this one.
Thank you, Alberto. I think every time we need a balance, and when we give, perhaps we shall receive. So it's a question of balance. And when we talk about ecosystem, and we at the beginning we have talked about transport ecosystem. It's all the modes of transport. So everyone need to have the right support to deliver the right deliverables in the future. So let's ask that we have a balance sheet for everyone with the right deliverance for each one. So the next question goes to Carlo, and it's a question that has some interest coming from Portugal, of course, and I would like to ask you, can you give a short information about the progress of Europe's Rail 2 process, what's going on, and can you explain us what kind of expectations small and medium countries, if they are not founding members, may have regarding its participation in the new JU, like Portugal?
Thank you, Francisco. Well, first of all, let's say, as I said before, that many Portuguese entities are participating already to the Shift to Rail joint undertaking. And we believe that via the proposal of the Commission, the open call approach, so the wider participation to the program will allow also enhancing this participation. Where we are today in the preparation of Europe's Rail, we expect that the Commission will adopt the decision that will be the basis for the adoption later on by the Council of the Single Basic Act, the Basic Regulation, in the next days. This will be clearly an important step under the Portuguese presidency to launch the negotiation between the member states and the discussion. And we believe that such negotiation will last during most probably the full 2021. So we can expect that during the last quarter 2021, the start of activity of the Europe's Rail, the adoption of the Council regulation, and all the steps. But we don't miss this opportunity. We take this as an opportunity to start the setup and the preparation for the partnership. So we had the first meeting of the future candidate members of the partnership. These will be followed by meetings on a monthly basis, with the objective really to look at how to set up the program, how to define the structure of the program, how to ensure the wider participation of entities, and so on and so on, to set up all the elements in a manner that once the Council would agree on the launch of the activity of the European partnership, we are ready to start without losing any other time. In terms of opportunities for participation, clearly we need to face the budget available. This will be, as you know, Did I mention that also Alberto and Philippe mentioned before? But the idea is the Commission has proposed the concept of open calls driving the full setup of the organization. So there will be no any more distinction between call open only to the founding member, the call open to associating member, call open to third parties. It will be an opportunity to work together. And it will depend on how we will set up the program. We expect a major contribution of those that intend commit on the long term, but we need also to ensure that as we want to bring together as a European network, we want to break down the barrier between the different networks to be sure that all the parties in Europe are participating to this opportunity. Not only, but the system pillar will be a major opportunity for participation, because where we will work together on the future concept of operation, where the major input is expected from operating community, from infrastructure manager, together with the supply industry, because it's a sector that has to have a system approach, is in the system pillar. Independently from how much money will be invested or funds will be invested in research innovation, the most important thing is to define a common understanding on how we want to run the operation in the futures. And this, I think, will be the paramount driver of the opportunity. There will be opportunity also for the research community, for universities, because we need to look not only what we need today, but we need to look at what we need today in the next generation. In China, a few weeks ago, first low constellation satellite G7 was launched. We are still having GSMR in our network. We are targeting the future FRMCS and 5G. We need to be ready to think about what will come. And we need to be having technology that is open to the correct evolution based on a performance target, complying with safety requirement and independent certification. But we need to have the logic of being able to scale up our future system, protecting the investment that have been done, and creating opportunity for the future. So it will be really the opportunity to involve the sector. There will be a requirement of investment to be committed, and the long-term commitment per project, per activity, per knowledge to be brought in. But this is really at the fundamentals of the work we want to design in Europe's rail.
Thank you, Carlo. Ambition never ends. It's your message, and we'll continue to be ambitious. So, Philippe, what do you think about these last words coming from Carlo? The challenges, the new challenges, FRMCS, 5G, 7G, and what are your expectations on Shift Rail 2, as you are a big part of the stakeholders that should be involved in Shift Rail process?
Just, if you allow me, I just wanted to say something that I would like to pay tribute to what the operators and infrastructure managers have been doing on COVID-19. But we must not forget, although in other sectors in the industry, we had the lockdowns, we have to send engineers where they were quarantined, and we were able, globally speaking, to avoid as many as it was possible to close the factory. So on our side, the industry has been, and the bigger players, the SMEs have been very active as well to continue to produce and to keep the factory open. I wanted to say that and to pay tribute to all those what we call also the frontline workers. Sorry, but I want to say a few words about this because this is very important. Concerning Shift to Rail 2, Europe's Rail, I don't want to add a lot of things. Of course, for us, there's been quite a lot of work being done at the level of ERAC for all the rail sectors with the involvement of DG Move and DGU. And so we had produced documents called the SRIA, where the Portuguese are invited to participate in ERAC, as you know. And we also had the transforming project. So a lot of things have been done. And so I will not come back, but on the very important things concerning the digitalization, the system pillar where we have to work in, which would be absolutely essential to be sure that all the rail sectors would be able to work and to find find the solution, the system pillar for the future. This is also what has been mentioned by Carlo on 5G, FRMCS, and we're very happy to see that now there's a big tender where a lot of rail stakeholders are being involved. So I think a lot of things are going to be done, but on my side, really, I think it's the opportunity for the Portuguese rail stakeholders to be, sorry to say, much more active and to try to participate in Shift to Rail 2 in Europe's rail, because we know that you are planning to invest a lot. You want to modernize your system. You even have the idea of having a high-speed train between Porto and Lisbon. That's a dream. And when you work in the rail supply industry, you really like all the projects which are linked to high-speed rail, and that we're very happy to see in the smart mobility strategy presented by the Commission, the ambitious target for high-speed rail. So it's on our side. I don't think I can add to what Elisabeth, Carlo, and Alberto said on Shift to Rail 2, Europe's rail, because you have to call it like this now.
Okay, thank you.
So, Francisco, can I interrupt? I would like to place a question to Elisabeth. Well, those amounts of investments, they are really, and especially these objectives of in 2030 and 2050 that we need to achieve, they are really ambitious, and it is, wow. But I was wondering if the European Commission is taking into consideration, because when you speak about high-speed connections, for us, like Portugal, that we are at the end of Europe, at the last hand, even being in a major difference between the infrastructure level that the rest of the Europe has, are you taking into consideration this gap being below in terms of infrastructure, and also be at the farthest end of Europe? Are you taking into consideration the help, the additional help we need to overcome infrastructure level to go to those high-speed connections? Because that's extremely relevant, because we are at last hand, and so we need more help, because otherwise everything is taking place in the center of Europe.
It's a very good question. If you want my personal view of these different rail targets that we have set, the one on high speed is perhaps the most ambitious. Yeah? I want to reassure you that certainly the kind of questions about how to connect into a European network when you are at the periphery will not be forgotten, because our commissioner is Romanian. So yes, certainly she will have that same perspective. She's on the other end of Europe. No, what I want to say is that high speed is a very specific expression, but it means different things to different people. We have, of course, a definition in technical specifications for interoperability. We do not have a specification of minimum speed in the Trans-European Transport Networks regulation. And this revision is coming up. I mentioned it there. And I think what we really ought to have a serious discussion is, what does it mean for different geographical conditions? I'm coming from a country that is fairly central in the continent, but it's a very mountainous country with narrow valleys. So there as well, you would not necessarily find it economically interesting to run trains at 300 kilometers an hour. It's just super expensive also. So I think this is a discussion that probably we should have, and we should certainly think in terms of high performance trains, not necessarily high speed in terms of maximum possible speed. And what we absolutely also need to bear in mind is the connectivity question. With connectivity, I have in mind something like within 5 hours by train, connecting also then to other modes of transport. What other cities in Europe can you reach? And this is, I think, a more interesting question if we want to think about the transport network as a whole, that we have performing rail connections that lead you to other connecting hubs so that you can effectively integrate railways into most of your European journeys. I'm not sure this answers completely your question, but I think the needs of high speed are different. Certainly, the starting positions for high speed are different. We know we do not have a high speed network in Europe. We have high speed lines, but we do not have a network that connects all of Europe. The question I'm raising is, do we even need 300 kilometers per hour trains everywhere, or can we think about a network that allows us to travel by rail in combination with other modes to link most of these cities? Back to you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. How Cardoso Reis was announcing, it's a matter of balance, investments balance in terms of perspectives and objectives. I don't know if Cardoso Reis would, because in fact we are exactly at the end of the panel hand. Well, I would like to thank you all for your participation. It has been very well appreciated because we are receiving the figures. Well, we have more than 600 people watching, following this panel. So we are very glad and we thank you all for your participation. And let's move on to the next panel. And I hope to have you again in further discussions, especially because definitely rail is a must that needs to go on. Thank you very much to you all.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So we will doing a short break, a 15-minute short break, and we will be back at 4:15. Thank you very much.